The film doesn't lie, and we have watched it. Let's talk about what exactly happened in that disastrous Bengals Week 1 loss to the Patriots.
You are Locked On Bengals, your daily Cincinnati Bengals podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What up, Bengals fans, and welcome to another episode of the Locked On Bengals podcast. I'm your host, Jake Liscow. He's your host, James Rapien. Today we are joined by Mike Santagata. Mike Santagata of the Always Game Day in Cincinnati podcast and writing for BengalsTalk.com. You can find his full film breakdown sometime this week, a little bit later this week. We're early here on Locked On Bengals for the film takes on BengalsTalk.com with clips and a full fleshed out analysis of a lot of the things we're going to talk about in this episode. This episode on the Locked On Podcast Network, covering your team every day on YouTube, everywhere you get your podcast. Shout out to the everydayers. Thanks for coming back. Shout out to all of you who make us your first listen. And if you're new, highly encourage that subscribe button, as we'll keep you covered throughout the season here on Locked On Bengals. And it was a rough start to the season in multiple ways, not only from a game result perspective, but from a start of the game on offense perspective for the play callers, for Joe Burrow. I thought it was an up and down game for Burrow, Mike. I thought the beginning was bad. I thought the end was bad. I thought the play calling was rough in the beginning of the game too, but let's focus in on Joe Burrow's performance. What were your big takeaways when you saw Burrow on tape?
I mean, the big takeaways, yes, there was a roller coaster here. Some of it was good, especially in the middle there, but it wasn't up to snuff for what is a highly paid quarterback at this point, for a guy that I think everybody in this chat thinks is a top 3, 5, at least 7 guy, I would think, but like top 3, 5 probably in this room, top 3 probably in this room. So that's not up to snuff to be able to just go like, he was bad to start. There was a little bit of good in there, and then he was bad, real bad to finish it. I don't think that's good enough quarterback play, and you kind of needed him to play better than that because you're missing T. Higgins. You think we paid this quarterback all this money, he should be able to elevate or at least be able to have a functioning offense with the talent around him. And yes, there were play calling issues, but when we're talking specifically about the quarterback, I think I saw that he checked into the flat screen. It's like, why? It wasn't a cover zero look. Like, that's usually when you get to that play. So then you're throwing the ball a screen where you don't have a numbers advantage, all on a 4th and 2. It just didn't make any sense. A lot of the stuff didn't make any sense from both quarterback play and play calling. So another slow start. It reminded me a little bit of the Pittsburgh game, just in terms of he just didn't look right. He looked sped up. It got into a rhythm at some point, but overall just didn't look like the Burrow we're used to seeing.
Let's start with the end, because 16-10, first down, 3 minutes to go, ball on the 10. Thank you, New England, for punting. It's like, all right, well, go win the game. Like, if you go win the game right now, maybe not everything is forgiven, but some of it's forgiven, and you get the heck out of there with a win. And he talked about it afterwards. He said it wasn't his best drive, and I know he was putting it lightly. He took blame, broke down each play. But what did you see on that drive? I still think Zach should have went for it on 4th and 5, and I'm going to keep ripping him for it. But from a Joe Burrow standpoint, those 3 plays, was it as bad on the film as it felt in real time?
Worse to me. First play, they roll from 2 high to single high, which what you're dreaming about if you're the Bengals. They have an out route for Jamar Chase on. He never looks at him. He's watching the Gesicki through route like the entire time. Made no sense to me. That's not even the first read in the progression, I don't think. I guess I'm not in the room. Maybe he just loved that, but the safety was coming down to cover that from depth. So it made no, move on. It's just like he couldn't see the safeties for some reason. He had Jamar Chase wide open on that play and never even looked his way. And then you got the second down. They call Dragon Line, which is like the staple quick game concept for the Bengals. It's 2 slants on one side, slant flat on the other. The Patriots played Tampa 2 on that one. your options here are to go to the double slant side. He doesn't love it because the corner's kind of cheating to Jamar Chase, who's the outside slant, which is usually where you go on that. If he throws it inside, he could probably hit Irwin, but Irwin's also probably taking a nice shot from the Mike linebacker. So I got checking it down. Didn't understand the jump pass that hit Zach Moss in the feet, that he kind of like threw up into a Patriots linebacker's face. Then the third play was the worst. They called a shot play, like the most exciting, and the Patriots rolled the single high. It was crazy. This is like what you dream about if you're the quarterback. Like, oh my God, we have a shot play. Jamar Chase one-on-one. If you watch the play, the corner's falling over trying to keep up with Chase on the double move, and he just doesn't throw it. Instead, he doesn't even give it time to develop. That's a real frustrating part, where I don't know if he just saw too high pre-snap and just went, we can't run this. I'm going to go try to make something happen, because once he hits the bottom of his drop, I think it was a 5-step. Once he hits the bottom of his drop, he basically puts the ball in his arm like he's going to go run somewhere, never sets himself to throw the ball down the field, there's no opportunity. I thought both Yosivas and Chase were open on that. It could have been not just an explosive, that could have been a 90-yard game leading touchdown with minutes to go. And instead, he doesn't give it a chance to develop. He lowers his eyes. There's no pressure, and then throws another weird jump pass to the running back. I felt like he was so sped up. And on that one specifically, it's like, even if you are sped up, hang in there and find a way to throw that ball down the field, because by the time that ball gets up in the air, I think Jamar Chase would have had 2-3 yards of separation working down the field, where even if it's underthrown, he's still able to stop and catch it. So that was by far the most frustrating play to watch. And then, yeah, like you said, Zac Taylor not going for on fourth there. Like, what are we doing here? The tackling's been so bad. You're not seeing that ball again.
Yeah, we'll get to the tackling, unfortunately. The defensive issues were pretty cut and dried. But that last drive is so interesting to me because it comes off a series where Burrow's playing pretty well in the middle of the game. And they're finding the answers. He looks comfortable. He's not sped up. He is in control. He understands what the Patriots are trying to do, and he's getting the Bengals into the right plays. And then he finishes the game 1 for 4 for 5 yards on that check down when he should be throwing it up deep to one of his two outside receivers against a look where it's inviting that throw. And he also takes a sack, which isn't entirely his fault. They had some issues on the right side of the offensive line with Trent Brown and Alex Kappa a couple times, especially Trent Brown in pass protection, but also has a scramble there. And it's just passing up opportunities for throws that are hard, given that they're not your easy 5-yard, the receiver is going to take it underneath the cover 2 and get 7 yards out of it kind of plays, where they're finding those answers to cover 2 in the middle of the game. But it is concerning that he doesn't see Jamar Chase on that out route that you talked about on the first down in that last drive. And he said that after the game. He said he missed Jamar. Okay, so you missed Jamar, which is funny because there are some other plays in the game where he's looking at Jamar and there's easier options elsewhere, as is the game you play when you have a star receiver like that. But the last play is also an interesting one because I think he sees pressure flash. I think Keon White is over Cordell Volson there. There's a one-on-one to start before Ted Karras comes over and cleans it up. I think he sees that flash in his face a little bit, the flash of pressure there, and that's where you see the eyes come down and the throwing position kind of vanish, and he tries to react to that, ends up checking it down. Because as soon as you come out of that throwing posture there, he's not – we talked about this somewhere. He's not like Anthony Richardson on that incredible touchdown pass he threw yesterday on Sunday, where he can just take a step and then rip it 60 yards. And so as soon as his throwing position breaks down, he has to check it down. And so that's a pocket issue, a pocket feel issue, which wasn't consistent for him. And this is kind of how the beginning of seasons has been for Joe Burrow in recent years. And maybe it's as simple as that. Like, he needs time to develop the pocket feel as the season goes on. There's a little bit more to get to, though, on Joe Burrow. And I had some issues with the play calling this week. And I know that usually I'm the first to defend the play calling. We'll get to some of those topics coming up next.
Today's show is brought to you by Hims. Men, when we leave the house, it's phone, wallet, keys, how's my hair look? But if you're experiencing hair loss, you may not be so confident when you step outside the door. It's time to get that confidence back and restore your hair with Hims. Hims provides access to a range of hair loss treatments that work all from the comfort of your couch. They make treating hair loss simple with doctor trusted treatment options and clinically proven ingredients that regrow hair in as little as 3 to 6 months. Start your free online visit today at hims.com/lockedonnfl. That's hims.com/lockedonnfl, hims.com/lockedonnfl for your personalized hair loss treatment options. hims.com/lockedonnfl. Results vary based on studies of topical and oral minoxidil. Prescription products require an online consultation with a healthcare provider who will determine if a prescription is appropriate. Restrictions apply. See website for full details and important safety information. All right, final thoughts, at least on Burrow, and then we can get to the play calling. Mike, have you seen Burrow in the past just be so? It felt like the field was like 7 yards, and he's throwing it within 7 yards of the line of scrimmage always. 3 throws of 20 plus yards, according to next gen stats from an air yards perspective. It wasn't like the Patriots were having a bunch of missed tackles, by the way. They were playing discipline. The short game wasn't working. Have we seen this from Burrow before, where really throughout the game he did not want to pull the trigger on any downfield options?
Yeah, I think not taking an injury game like the Cleveland one or something, but and he threw go balls in that game. They just didn't connect. That's why I brought up the Pittsburgh 2022 game, and I think Dallas 2022. Maybe he pushed the ball down the field a little bit more in those games, but that's what it most felt like to me, where he was sped up. There were opportunities that he was turning down because he thought he didn't have time, hitting this check down probably a little too quick. And there's a lot of quick game called. So that part of it, who's that on? I don't know. They ran a lot of stick with Mike Gesicki, and they ran a lot of slant flat stuff. It's a little bit of Hank too. One of I know JT O'Sullivan's least favorites, curl flat. So there's plenty of that in there. And at some point, why are you not calling plays to attack the intermediate middle of the field? Because Juwan Bentley is known for tackling. He's known for stopping the run. If he's guarding Jamar Chase 20 yards down the field, yeah, I'll take that matchup, even if it's a little contested for me. I mean, that's fine. They ended up getting there with that one throw that Burrow made. But when you're going to play Tampa 2, it was one of those things that happened back in the 2000s. Not everybody has a Mike linebacker that's Brian Urlacher. So why don't we just take advantage of that guy?
And that gets to some of the play calling stuff. And like I said, usually play calling concerns, I think, are overblown in the initial reaction to games. And we don't always know where Joe Burrow is making a check. For example, if Joe Burrow checked into that screen on 4th and 2, that's just one example of, is it play calling? Is it the quarterback's decision? But to me, it took the Bengals way too long to get the Patriots out of cover 2 early in the game. And they didn't get to the answers fast enough. There's too many instances on tape where you're watching the route combinations and the middle of the field is wide open and the Bengals just aren't challenging it. You've got middle of the field open pre-snap, it's middle of the field post-snap, and they're not challenging the middle of the field. To me, that is a play calling issue where you're calling, like you said, Mike, you're throwing paper into scissors and you're just doing it over and over and over and not getting to those answers fast enough. They did adjust. They did get there. And they had that streak of success in the middle of the game where they were moving the ball, and then they had some turnovers that were issues. But to me, that is a play calling issue. We can talk about personnel as well here. What were your thoughts, though, Mike, when it comes to the way that this game was called on the offensive side of the ball?
Yeah, I still think it's probably a tiny bit overblown, but I do think it was bad. Like, I think both things here can be true. I don't think it was the worst thing you could ever imagine. I don't think he draws plays up in the state. Like, every time I see a play, I know the concept. So he's not drawing these things up on the sideline where it doesn't make any sense. But I don't know if they're the right concepts. And you don't exactly know. Maybe Burrow tapped the helmet, killed into that play. Maybe he didn't. But yeah, it took a while to finally get to that 12 personnel, Eric All, Drew Sample combo, and they ran the heck out of the football on that one drive, and that was their best looking drive. They were in that personnel grouping because they're able to get bodies on bodies. Eric All was good at the second level. He had some whiffs at the first level, but he had a couple plays at the second level that were like, ooh, that is nice. And even on his whiffs, like obviously that's bad, but on the touchdown, he whiffs.
But he got in the way.
He got in the way. The guy had to go outside of him and underneath, and the play hit by then. So like he did his job in a way, and then Drew Sample on that play. Oh my goodness, he took out the end and pancaked the linebacker 6 yards in the end zone. That was a man's play. But yeah, I thought the biggest issues for me were let's not attack their refrigerator on wheels linebacker that's playing 20 yards down the field. I mean, Javon Bentley is probably the closest you get to a neck roll at this day and age. And I mean that in a good way. I love watching him, but he is an old school. He is an old school linebacker. That is what you're hoping Muma might be able to be with his 4.9 speed, where it's like, yeah, he can hopefully has a little bit of feel in space, but we want this guy going downhill. Patriots had him playing 20 yards down the field. Let's attack that, but they didn't. And then the other part of this is the personnel grouping, which I just talked a little bit about. Like the Bengals should have been using that Eric All, Drew Sample combination earlier because the run game looks so much better.
Yeah. And honestly, I'm going to go ahead and say it. He outsnapped Tanner Hudson anyways. And I know Hudson has Burrow's trust. We'll see after a couple bad plays, the fumble and what I think was a drop that led to the Yoshi 4th and 2 decision. But even with that, I think Eric All, one, is going to get more snaps. Two, and Jake and I were talking about it before we started, he's reliable. He's a reliable route runner. Joe Burrow raved about him when we asked about him last week. Wouldn't shock me at all if we see Eric All catch a few passes in Kansas City because he seems like, one, he loves blocking. I'm sure you can tell that. Like he's eager to do it.
He's 8 yards down the field, still driving his feet. He loves it.
Yeah. He literally told me he likes it better than catching passes, which how many guys that can do both like that better? Like it's kind of a rare trait, which I know the Bengals love. But two, he could be on the field and you could do that blocking stuff, or you can have him run routes. He isn't Sample where you don't really want him running routes and catching balls. Like he can do that. So I think Eric All is just going to continue to have an increased role as the season goes on, probably starting this week.
The other thing that could go hand in hand with is, does that get them into pistol and under center more? Does it vary them in pistol and under center a little bit more? They had 3 snaps in pistol. They were all runs. One of them early in the game, 2 of them in the red zone, and very successful runs leading to that Zach Moss touchdown. Both of them with the Eric All motion into a block across the formation. One of them was like tight end power, where both tight ends come across the formation. And the other one, you mentioned Drew Sample starts on the right side and is just Eric All coming across. Both of those pretty cool plays, but can they get to more stuff if they get to pistol more with that 12 personnel look? Can they get to more variety under center than just 3 play action passes and a quarterback sneak if they go to 12 personnel a little bit more? And I don't even know if their under center stuff is all 12 personnel, but those things could go hand in hand a little bit. And not only that, the under center play action stuff was not respected. There was very little hesitation from the second level of that Patriots defense on a couple of those plays where the Bengals go under center play action. And Burrow isn't like totally turning his back, so maybe they need to work on the execution of the fake, or maybe there's just not respect for it because they haven't run the ball out of under center in the game yet or put that on tape. And they're expecting that wrinkle of under center to be play action. And so, they had some shot plays from under center play action, and then the deep stuff wasn't available for some reason or another because the Patriots weren't biting or whatever the reason was. So some opportunities there from a personnel perspective, and to get a little bit more diverse or commit to some of these non-shotgun formations a little bit as well. And we'll see how they adjust against the Chiefs, because they can certainly not repeat that slow start and poor finish to have any hope of winning in Kansas City next week. They also need to fix some things on the defensive side of the ball. We'll discuss those glaring issues and what actually wasn't as bad as we feared it would be to finish the show coming up next.
Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. You've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel, and Well, for good reason. It's America's #1 sports book. Well, FanDuel has something a little different for you this month, now through September 22nd. So you have under 2 weeks. You got to do it now. All FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. That's right, a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket. All you have to do is go to FanDuel.com, and then with a YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment. You can cancel at any time. Take advantage of this offer today by going to FanDuel.com. The Bengals, of course, they're underdogs in Kansas City. Maybe you think that they're going to surprise people after what they did against the Patriots by going to KC and winning. Maybe you don't. Doesn't matter. Go to FanDuel.com today, wager $5 on anything, and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket. Visit FanDuel.com. Again, that's FanDuel.com to download America's #1 sportsbook.
Cincinnati Bengals had some tackling issues, and that is pretty straightforward. I think we also need to talk about the interior defensive line, Mike, but when you were watching this defense, did it seem as straightforward as one team tackled, one team didn't?
Honestly, yeah. I felt like every run play they had a guy that could have made the stop. It's not like they were getting truly dominated, wide open holes. I'm trying to find the tweet, but so we put out, I think, 116 or something of Ramondre Stevenson's yards came after contact, and he had 120 yards, something like that. It was like all but 4 yards came after contact. It was insane. You make contact with him in the backfield, you're able to get a hand on him, but we saw multiple times Dax Hill flying off of him or missing completely. Just the defensive backs in general. I thought Pratt overran a couple of those or wasn't too hesitant. Like they ran power the one time. It's a spill overlap from the linebackers. Wilson spills it, and then Pratt's overlapping, and then he just kind of like sits there, and Stevenson runs past him. It's like, well, yeah, you did your job in a way. We still need to make the play. Like you did everything going up to there. Why did you just stop? Didn't make any sense to me. So there was quite a bit of that, and it just felt like they were in general kind of slow to the ball. It felt like at times kind of soft. They love, and I enjoy it when it forces a fumble, tackling the running back high and like trying to rip the ball out. But it looked like Cam Taylor-Britt was doing that on the second down when they picked up the first down to end the game. It's like, just bring him down, dude. Like there's no point in giving up these extra yards and making this more difficult. He got contacted, I think, either in the backfield or at the line of scrimmage, and he just drags Cam Taylor-Britt for like 8 yards. So I thought they did better against Gibson. I also just think Gibson's not as good of a running back. So yep. Stevenson, give him some credit. He's a good running back. But at the same time, they missed as many tackles as I can remember. And every time they missed a tackle, it was a huge gain. When they didn't miss a tackle, they made the stop. It was as simple as that. And then the passing game, I think more issues in the pass game was just Jacoby Brissett not having anybody able to contain him after a pressure. The stuff down the field, it didn't even matter in this game. It was all just the running game. And
yep.
That's how it ended up, where you missed enough tackles that they moved the ball down the field and scored.
That's my issue is they got pressure on Brissett. And this morning, on Monday morning, Gerard Mayo goes on WEEI, the most popular radio station in Boston. It's like, yeah, he literally, and I'm paraphrasing, but he's like the slowest black quarterback in the NFL used his legs. And his legs were something the Bengals just didn't account for, I guess. I don't know. But he had a 16-yard scramble. He ran for multiple runs where they should have been negative plays, and instead they're positive plays. And against a team like the Patriots, that's huge because their offense stinks. And so it was like 32 yards total. But those were a big 32 yards, not being able to get him down and only bringing him down for a sack. I think it was just once, and it was Dax Hill for like a 1-yard loss.
Mm-hmm. It was Brissett sliding, I think, in front of Dax Hill. So it wasn't even – yeah. Brissett ran for 3 first downs on his 7 attempts. 7 attempts, 32 yards, 3 first downs. So, and some of those were just like get off the field kind of plays where the Bengals should have had a sack, but instead it leads to a first down. Mike,
3 of their 17 first downs, just to give you an idea.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's brutal.
Mike, you quoted a Ramondre Stevenson's stat there, 118 out of 120. Is that what you said?
Yards I think it's 116, but yeah.
Yeah. So 118 out of Ramondre Stevenson's 120 yards, according to PFF charting, were after contact. That means he averaged 4.8 yards per carry, 4.72 yards per carry after contact. which doesn't even count the play where I think it was Geno Stone, or was it Dax Hill and either Geno Stone or Logan Wilson on the last drive had a shot at him in the backfield, and he just had that little stutter step and ran right around both of whoever. I think it was Wilson. Can't remember anyway. But Dax Hill nobody made contact with him in the backfield when two guys had a chance at him in the backfield. And he hits that little juke and goes for like 18 yards or something. I guess his long was 17, so it couldn't have been 18. But yeah, I mean, to me, it was just run defense issues in terms of tackling and second level guys. I think Sam Hubbard had issues with tight ends, had issues getting off blocks, had issues holding the edge. But in all of this, the thing that we were concerned about was defensive tackle depth. And some of the better games in run defense in this game came from defensive tackle depth. And it's not like the Patriots have a great interior offensive line. David Andrews is a good center. Michael Jordan was starting for them at left guard. This is going to be much harder next week against the Chiefs' interior offensive line that has much better
nightmare.
players.
It's a nightmare. Yeah.
But pass rush aside, where Zach Carter and Jay Tufele didn't contribute in the pass rush at all, Sam Hubbard had a 0% pass rush win rate according to PFF. I thought Zach Carter actually had a good game in the run. Jay Tufele had a number of run stops and was generally pretty good against the run. The interior defensive line wasn't the issue to me in the run game. They needed to do more in terms of helping to clean up some of those Trey Hendrickson pressures and turn them into sacks. But in the run game, that could have been a lot worse. I thought it was actually pretty good.
Yeah, I did too. I was surprised, especially going back, because at first I just assumed like, man, there must have been some big holes. I was like, I don't know. When you're watching live, you don't get everything. And I was assuming that the Patriots interior offensive line just won that battle. I wouldn't put it that way. I thought it was more of like a nice stalemate of the defensive tackles held up. And I was impressed. I was impressed with Zach Carter, Jay Tufele. I thought BJ Hill was, other than the very last play where he just gets caved in by a tight end. He played so many snaps, 52, I think, out of 63 snaps or something like that. And they had him at end. They had him inside. He was doing everything. And up until that play, I thought he was good against the run. So, yeah, I was impressed. It was kind of like they stepped up and then everybody else let them down. Where that could have been the story, was just how cool was it that the run depth was stepping up and keeping the linebackers clean and making plays. Jay Tufele had a couple TFLs. And Zach Carter, they put Zach Carter at nose tackle and he survived. I was like, okay.
I mean, he put some jolts into David Andrews. Not just survive, but like he moved guys a couple of times. It was an impressive. So there were some very impressive reps for Zach Carter.
Yeah, under 300-pound nose tackle, and he's out there able to give it to the other way. I was really impressed with that. I think that's one of the things you can look at and be impressed by. It also makes sense, I think, when you look at the success rate for the Patriots. It was 34% on the ground. So they got there and they made the play more often than not. That's not a good success rate. The Bengals were over, I think, 50% running the ball. Mm-hmm. When they didn't make that play, it was pretty much a guaranteed explosive every time they missed the tackle, because they'd funnel it to a defensive back, they'd miss the tackle, or a linebacker, they'd miss the tackle, and then he's running free at a free safety or a post safety deep down the field. So that was the big issue. And also, with barely any time left, wanted to bring up, I thought Lou kind of cooked. Like, when I was watching, there was some cool slants, some cool stunts, just some stuff in the run game that he kind of protected his guys. Like, I think he knew going into the game, like, yeah, we don't have DJ Reader anymore, which we all said that. But I was half expecting him to just come out and play it like they used to, and they didn't. I thought they were running some very interesting run game stuff to try to stop the Patriots, and most of it actually worked.
Some cool run blitzes as well.
Yeah, it's such a bummer that they didn't do the basic thing. Right? Like you said, handle the basics, because this week they could do the basics and still get their butt kicked on the ground. And that's, again, that's what's rough. That's what's so bad about this loss in general, is they could do a lot of the things we just discussed, the negative things, much better in 6 days when they're in Kansas City, and they could be looking at their third straight 0-2 start. And so it's a bummer, fellas. I'm not going to lie to you. It's a bummer. But the run game stuff was easily the biggest concern on defense. And at least the defensive line held up. They'll be tested. But David Andrews is still a good player. to your point, it's not like he's some, third stringer. Michael Jordan example is a little worse.
The right guard, real strong. He's a fun player. He's a rookie, 4th rounder. I think the Patriots say he's the strongest guy on the team. He had a couple of pancakes and some fun plays in terms of that. And he gave up like no pressure to that interior defensive line. So I was kind of impressed by him too, which that might be speaking to how this defensive line is going to play next week. But really strong player. So able to hold up on some of those.
A lot to correct is putting it lightly. But this is a game where in the middle part of this game, when I watched it again, I thought the Bengals should have gotten right back in the driver's seat. Even after setting their first 3 drives on fire, the Tanner Hudson fumble into the Charlie Jones fumble is just a brutal sequence of back-to-back possessions where instead of getting the game tied and then who knows what happens on the Patriots' ensuing drive going into the half, and instead of getting a 3-and-out and starting the second half with momentum, that was just on top of setting the first 3 drives of the game on fire, too much for them to overcome. And when you give up 16 points, you would expect the Bengals to win those games. And the offense didn't get their part of the bargain done. The defense wasn't perfect, but they only gave up 4 long drives. They had 6 drives where they got off the field in 6 plays or less. Some 3-and-outs in there too. Some disappointing mistakes between the ball security and the tackling. And that largely is part of the difference in the game that I think leads to the way the game finishes on offense, where the quarterback and the offense just did not finish the game well. And obviously those things need to be better next week. I think everybody knows that. I think Joe Burrow knows that more than anyone else. He was immediately aware, like James mentioned after the game in his presser, that he missed Jamar Chase on that first play in that last drive. And so we'll see how they correct things, how they move on, how they bounce back. It's a big game to get up for in week 2 in Kansas City. And we will shift our attention there in our next episode here on Locked On Bengals and put week 1 behind us. Until then, you can find Mike at Bengals_Sands on Twitter. Thanks for listening. Hoo day, and have a good one.